Okay, good morning, everybody. This is Lisa Mirth with Zobrio, and we are here today to look at how to prepare for your Financial Edge 1099 year-end processing. I hope I have everybody on the call here. We're going to go ahead and get started. For purposes of our call today, I've muted everybody. At the end of the demonstration, I will unmute everybody. If you guys have any questions, you'll be able to speak freely. Otherwise, there is a chat tool in the Zoom meeting that you can use. If you go into chat and want to ask any questions, I can address those at the end. Feel free to use that throughout the meeting as we go. Okay. So what we're going to review here today, we're going to start by running a 1099 vendor activity report. That will give us the overview of what vendors we have that have been identified as 1099 vendors and what their activity is. We can review that report for missing vendors. If we find that we have missing vendors, we can go in and update their vendor 1099 status. We can then regenerate that 1099 vendor activity report for only 1099 vendors and see what activity detail they have. When we are finished with that and have reviewed that, if we find that we have any adjustments or need to make any further updates to vendors, we'll review how to make those changes in addition. Okay? So the way we get started is in the AP module, we go to reports, and under reports we find vendor reports, and you should find a 1099 activity report. On that 1099 activity report, you'll find that it has 3 tabs. The first tab is the general tab, and on it you want to make sure that you select the applicable period. So if we're running this before December 31st, let's go ahead and run it with this calendar year. Otherwise, of course, you can select that drop box and change it to last calendar year. Okay? It'll always show you the dates next to it so you'll know which period you're running it for. You just want to spot check those and make sure you have the right period. Excuse me. There are 3 boxes below here that determine which vendors will be included in that vendor activity report. The first one says to include vendors with 1099 activity that are not marked as 1099 vendors. I recommend running the first run of this with that box checked. That way we can review and see if there are any vendors that we should have or we had intended to include or thought had 1099 activity, but maybe we just haven't set them up yet as a 1099 vendor. The second box says include vendors with activity below the 1099 the box minimums. So at this point, because we're still early on, you may want to go ahead and include that box also. There could be another AP check run or 2 here in the future that may push them up over their $600 limit. And the third box says include vendors with 0 activity. That's at your discretion through this first run. Really, we're just trying to find any vendors that should be marked with 1099 setup. Okay? When you hit preview, you should get a report that looks similar to this. You'll see all your vendors identified and what box number has activity. So if you look down at Alpha Graphics, you'll see Alpha Graphics down here has $245 in the box 7. Okay, there's also another, we have another vendor down here. Phil Carpenter has $625 in box 7. So Alpha Graphics falls under that $600 threshold. This one falls over. If I had some additional checks for Alpha Graphics throughout the rest of the year, that would push them up over the limit. When we do our 1099 processing, if Alpha Graphics remains at $245, they would not get a 1099 generated. Okay? Now let's say that we know that ADS security systems not only had activity, but they should be a 1099 vendor. We know that they're supposed to receive a 1099, and we know that we've had activity for them through the year. We need to go in and double check their status. So if we go to their vendor record, in accounts payable under records, go to the vendor record, you need to verify a couple pieces of information. First, we need to update their, First, we need to update their tax ID number. Then we also need to make sure that we check this box that says that they are a 1099 vendor. When we do that, there's another box that displays 1099 distribution, and when you see that circle with the slash through it, it means that there's some information under there we're going to go review. There's one other piece that we want to double check, and that's under addresses. If we go click on the address box, and then under the address box, if we select options, there's a field down here that allows us to enter a 1099 name. If we don't want to use the vendor name the way it was entered under vendor, we can enter a different 1099 name. And in this case, we have Robert Smythe working as a DBA for Artists and Residents Unlimited. Okay. The one thing you want to make sure that is checked is this default address for 1099 forms. This is what will generate, this specifies which address will generate on the 1099 form. Okay? So back to our 1099 distribution box here, we also need to make sure we update that information. When you click that box and the 1099 distribution form opens, you need to make sure you update the 1099 box number that's applicable for this vendor, whether that be rents or whether it be box 7 for non-employee compensation. You need to also enter the reporting state, in this case, South Carolina. That should show up as a drop box. You should have the ability to click the drop box for state and select your state. And the percent, typically the percent would be 100%. 100% of that vendor's activity would be reported in box 1 for the state of South Carolina. That can be split if there's a scenario in which part of your monies are split. Some of the monies go to one box and some go to another. Okay. So when we have all of our vendors updated, everybody's been marked as a 1099 appropriately, we can go back and rerun that 1099 activity report. You go back under Accounts Payable, under Reports, select 1099, the vendor reports and the 1099 activity report. And this time on the General tab, we're going to again choose the same date range, of course. However, we're going to uncheck the first box. So we no longer want to include vendors that are not marked as 1099s. We're also going to deselect the include vendors with 0 activity. And our goal here is to generate a report that shows us simply what is going to generate on our 1099. Okay? I still go, you can uncheck the middle box, anybody below the minimums. I would go ahead and leave that included just in case, like I said, if you have some more check runs coming up here in your future that you want to make sure you account for those. Okay? The next thing we want to update or look at before we click preview on this report is we want to go to the Format tab. And under Format, we want to select Detail. And under Detail, we want to make sure we check this box that says Include State Detail. What this will do is this will generate an activity detail report showing for every vendor not only which box, but what state we're reporting those monies to for that box. Okay? When you click Preview, your report should generate looking something like this. This one shows us that Alpha Graphics, again, has their $245, and all of those monies are reported under State ID South Carolina. Very good. Here's our friend Phil Carpenter again. He has his $625 being reported to South Carolina. However, it looks like Paul Johns here has $125, but the state ID is missing. So that's kind of a trigger, so we know to go back to that distribution and go set that state. We had not selected a state for him, so that would need to be corrected. Once it's corrected, you could rerun the activity report again, verify it, make sure everything looks accurate. If we, in our final run of that 1099 activity report, if we identify that we have some vendors that either have some, let's say we have some consulting services on there that had reimbursable expenses and we need to deduct those. Those got included as 1099 activity and they should be excluded. The way we can do that is through a 1099 adjustment. From the vendor record, if you go down and select the 1099 Adjustments tab, it'll take you into a 1099 adjustments record for that vendor. On that screen, the 4 pieces of information that you need to fill out are the effective date, and the effective date generally can be the last day of the calendar year, that's okay, or any other date throughout that period would be fine. You need to identify what box it should be reported to and for what state it should be reported. The amount, let's talk about that real quick. In the scenario that I just gave you, we would want to enter a negative amount because currently they're including the reimbursable expenses. Let's say those reimbursable expenses were $300 here. We would want to make this a negative $300 amount, so it would pull $300 back out of that box. If you find that we have a vendor that, say, didn't have the 1099 vendor set at the time that an invoice was generated for them, and you're coming back after the fact, that in that case you would make it a positive amount. And that would bump that box up for that vendor. Okay? When you're all finished, you can run another 1099 activity report, continue to run that until that generates and shows all of the vendors with their proper 1099 amounts reported for each box. Okay, that's about it for the steps. The things we want to make sure that you're aware of, you can contact Blackbaud Forms. Here's the number and a web address. Or, I'm sorry, actually that's an email address. Things that you want to make sure that you keep in mind. For Financial Edge, the 1099 forms were pre-printed. So those will not be anybody who's coming from Fundware and has always experienced blank forms. You want to make sure that these are pre-printed for Financial Edge. And the only other thing that I'd like to have you make sure that you're collecting or have access to and double check that you have your TCC code for the IRS and your web login for e-filing those 1099s. Probably want to check that now and make sure that's active and valid. Okay. Just real quick to run through the filing deadlines. Everybody knows we have to have our paper copies mailed out, postmarked, no later than January 31st. The 1096 needs to be filed no later than April 1st. And we also have a note down there for anybody that has to submit W-2s also that that's a March 31st deadline. We also have some upcoming Zobrio University webinars you may want to make a note of. On Thursday, November 20th, we're looking at just a quick review of what you need to do for a fiscal year-end closing in Financial Edge. That'll be at 11 o'clock on the 20th. And on December 4th, John Quatto will be hosting a How to Keep Your IT Infrastructure Updated on a Budget. So anybody who's interested in that, please make sure you check, get signed up for those. Finally, today, if you're interested in signing up for assistance with your 1099 or W-2 processing, we're offering, you can contact Matt. Here's his contact information. And we're offering a special offer that if you get signed up for it today, we will assist you with your e-filing at no charge in February or March. And I'll leave that up for another moment or two in case anybody wants to give us a call. If you need any further assistance on 1099s, maybe any specific questions or help with that, you can always reach us through our help desk support line, 1-800-796-4984, and you can hit extension 3 for support. And if everybody has this, I think I'm going to go ahead and unmute us all. I haven't gotten any questions. Does anybody have anything that they want to ask about here or talk about real quick? Okay. Well, I hope the 1099 quick review here was helpful. We'll help you get your 1099s in order before we're ready to begin processing this year. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.